He was the director of Office of Trade and Manufacturing Policy under Donald Trump, spent 4 months in prison after the January 6th investigation due to his loyalty to the former president, and now he's out. He's written a new book. It's called The New MAGA Deal, the Unofficial Deplorables Guide to Donald Trump's 2024 Policy Platform. Peter Navarro is joining me on the Scott Sands Show. And Peter, last time you and I talked, you were in the White House. I hope one of the next times we talk, you're back in the White House.
Scott, first of all, great to be with you, but my focus right now is winning this election. If we lose this election, we're going to lose this country. Take that to the bank. The differences between Donald Trump's America and Kamala Harris's America are so stark that I can't even contemplate Kamala's world. We've got, in Kamala's world, inflation, a broken economy, a broken border, and all the murderers, rapists, drug cartels, and illegal aliens that come with that. We've got crime in our cities from her defunding the police. We got a loss of strategic energy dominance from a ban on fracking, and all the woke stuff. Don't even get me started on the woke stuff in women's sports in our schools. It's just so. The New MAGA Deal book. The website's newmagadeal.com. It's Don Jr.'s publishing house. Newmagadeal.com. What I try to do in anticipation of the 2024 campaign is lay out exactly what Donald Trump's going to do in terms of policy. It's 37 chapters, 100 actions in 100 days, how Donald Trump is very specifically going to fix the economy, the border, our foreign policy, the lawlessness in our streets, and the woke culture that is infecting our government, our corporations, our schools. And so, go ahead.
I was going to say, and that's got to be the difference in this election is the policies. Who's got the better ideas? Who's going to fix the economy? And right now, we really don't know what the hell Kamala Harris stands for because she's her spokespeople have flip-flopped her on so many issues now. The few policy details that we have heard on the economy is going to cost us as taxpayers another $3 trillion over the next 10 years. And that's just three of her policy issues that we know about.
Well, we have to take her at her word when we have her on videotape and tape, because we can't let her spokesman reverse her without her actually meeting the press.
Right.
So, and look, I mean, she's against fracking. She's going to be against fracking. What, is she going to have like a deathbed conversion so Pennsylvania might vote for her? Pennsylvanians know that that's a ruse. I mean, it's like, come on. It's like she's just saying that, and then after the election, she'll go back to the old defracking Pennsylvania line. Same thing with defunding the police. The border thing is very interesting. She, on her first day, stopped deportations. She has called for the decriminalization of illegal immigration, which effectively opens the border forever. I mean, if it's a misdemeanor, rather than you can get arrested and turned back to Mexico or wherever the hell you came from, then it's essentially a border without a border. On the crime, I mean, look, she's on record. Minneapolis. Boy, I'm telling you, Scott, that pair, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, I mean, you can't make this up. Minnesota, 2021, city's on fire. Tim Walz is the governor, refuses to send in the National Guard. Meanwhile, Vice President Kamala Harris is rooting on BLM and Antifa, burning down Minneapolis and raising money for them. I mean, come on.
And gets them out of jail. She's supposed to be the tough-on-crime prosecutor, or at least that's how they're trying to portray her, and she was getting these criminals out of jail after the riots.
That's correct. And when she was in California, her version of tough on crime was to go after anybody that Willie Brown didn't want to have released from any kind of criminal obligation because they were a big donor to the Democrat Party. And by the way, most of the people she put in prison were young, proud black men for nickel bags of marijuana. And meanwhile, she'd go out and get high that night and laugh all the way to her next job up the ladder. This woman, I'm a Californian. I lived out there for 25 years. I watched her rise, and I just scratched my head when she came up and was the anointed one for the Senate. She's never really had a contested contest. It's just they kind of give this stuff to her. California, the only way you got elected there is like if you had tons of money. So she got in bed with Silicon Valley and played that. And now she won't talk to the press. She won't talk to anybody.
Peter Navarro is here on the Scott Sand Show. He was Donald Trump's director of the Office of Trade and Manufacturing Policy. The new book is The New MAGA Deal, the Unofficial Deplorables Guide to Donald Trump's 2024 Policy Platform. One of the things Kamala Harris wants to do is increase the tax on corporations. And Donald Trump was able to get that lowered. I think he wanted to reduce it even more than he did. If Kamala Harris and Tim Walz have their way, then the United States will have one of the highest taxes on corporations. Corporations will leave the United States. We won't see as much money repatriated here, and people will lose their jobs. American companies become less competitive if she is elected.
See, this is the tough one to argue because you're absolutely right. But in Kamala Harris's fake, phony populist world, you have a situation where she can beat up on the big corporations, right? Raise the corporate tax rate, right? But as you point out, if you raise the corporate tax rate and it's higher than, say, in Europe, in China, in Ireland, in Latin America, then it makes sense for the multinational corporations to take their jobs from America and go chase that lower corporate tax rate. So when you lower the corporate tax rate, it's not pro-corporation, it's pro-worker. It's pro-investment in America. But that's a tough one. And so she'll basically try to sell that to naive voters. And if she gets in, she'll damn well do it. But the American workers will be the ones who'll be punished, not corporations. Take that to the bank.
Yeah, you see less investment in research and development, fewer wage increases for employees because everything will cost more. And as a result, those higher taxes are passed along to consumers. We're already paying more for everything because of the inflationary policies of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
That's absolutely right.
Who's our biggest threat economically as far as the economy and jobs and the future? Is it still China? I know you and I have talked about this in the past.
Well, it is and always will be communist China because of their economic aggression. I mean, they have a tremendous arsenal of mercantilist weapons that they attack us with, whether it's the currency manipulation, the subsidies, the counterfeiting, and piracy. But Donald Trump also knows that Europe's a big problem because they have a higher tax rate, they have lower tariffs than we do in Europe, for example, on automobiles, plus a value-added tax which acts as a tariff on our goods. So the combination of that, the lower tariffs in Europe and a VAT tax, we don't sell any cars there. I mean, it's for all practical purposes, America doesn't sell any cars in Europe, and they flood us with their Audis and BMWs and Mercedes and all that stuff. They just flood us. India is the Maharaja of tariffs. They have the highest tariffs in the world, so they're sticking it to us. But communist China, that's our first target. And Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, they're in bed with the Chinese. There's some great chapters in the New MAGA Deal book. It's newmagadeal.com that talks about dealing both with Chinese mercantilism, but also their predatory investment in the United States. They're coming in places like Pennsylvania, and they're setting up shop there trying to screw us. So it's a mindset. But that guy Tim Walz, he scares the hell out of me. You look at his history with communist China and his attitudes towards communist China. It's absolutely frightening. I mean, the guy is, I call him the Manchurian candidate. They brainwashed him decades ago. He's positioned to possibly be the president, and he thinks communist China is just a fine place, just a fine place. He never had a better time than in communist China.
The new MAGA deal, the unofficial deplorables guide to Donald Trump's 2024 policy platform. Peter Navarro here on the Scott Sands Show. Peter, I gotta ask the question. You had a great speech at the RNC right out of jail. I mean, you've been one of the most loyal people to Donald Trump. What was that experience like, if I can ask?
I think it's a less dangerous version of going to war for your country. I stood up for the Constitution. Every person involved in putting me in prison was a Democrat. It was lawfare, partisan warfare. And I took that prison bullet because I believe in the Constitution, the separation of powers, and my oath of office. So I went in there with that mindset. And while I was in there, I did my best to maintain my spirit, my mental health, my physical health. I think I did a lot of good while I was in there for some of the inmates. I was in, there were some bad people in there. Make no mistake about that. Some dangerous people, but there were a lot of first-time offenders in there, nonviolent offenders, and I was able to help them in ways that others couldn't just because of my, I guess you'd call it, stature coming in. And they were, the higher-ups were a little less likely to mess with me if I needed to get a doctor for one of the guys.
Right.
So there were a couple of times I had to play that card, and when they needed help, I helped them. So
glad you're out and
one
glad you're
day
able
at
to
a time, and do what you can do wherever you are.
On Twitter, on X, follow Real P. Navarro. The book is The New MAGA Deal, the unofficial deplorables guide to Donald Trump's 2024 policy platform. Peter Navarro on the Scott Sands Show. It's great to have you back on. I'd love to follow up with you as we learn more and about Kamala Harris' economic policies and a lot of important issues to discuss between now and November. So I'd love to have you back on again soon.
Anytime, brother.
Thanks, Peter.
You go get them. This is important 70 days we got.